Howdy, welcome to Texas A&M's second sustainability talk of the day, our third event for Monday for Virtual Earth Month. Very happy to have you join us today. So what we have today is Michelle Lee. She is going to be talking to you about domestic violence and how that relates to COVID-19. Michelle is a nutrition major, and she is class year 2021, and she is also an intern with us in the Office of Sustainability. So just a couple housekeeping notes. During Michelle's talk, we definitely encourage you to ask us some questions, to ask Michelle questions. And to do that, just please put your question in the chat, and I will ask all those questions at the end. And also, if you want to turn on live transcripts, there's a button that you can turn on. And finally, up by the green box on top where it shows my name that says I'm sharing my screen, to the right of that, you can click these three little dots and turn it into side-by-side mode, and that'll be a lot better way to view this presentation as soon as Michelle starts. With that being said, without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Michelle Lee, and she is going to get started with her sustainability talk. And again, thanks for joining us.
All right, cool. Thank you guys so much for coming. As Ben said, I'm Michelle Lee, and I will be talking about COVID-19 and how that's been affecting domestic violence. So first, I'll be going over just the basics of domestic violence, what it is, and clearing up some miscommunications about it. And then I'll be talking about our current situation right now. So what is domestic violence? The National Domestic Violence Hotline describes it as a pattern of behaviors used by one partner to maintain power and control over another partner in an intimate relationship. So this relationship could be romantic, or it could be like parent-child relationships. And the UN states that globally, 1 in 3 women will experience domestic violence in their lifetime. However, a common misconception is that only women will experience domestic violence, but that's not true. Anyone can experience it, whether it's men, women, children, LGBTQ community, or heterosexual relationships. No one is exempt from domestic violence. So we have here a wheel of how abusers can use power and control over their victims. So that could be things such as using intimidation, such as smashing things, destroying property, abusing pets, or economic abuse, such as making her ask for money, giving an allowance, or not having access to family income. And something that's really prevalent right now is using isolation. So that's limiting her outside involvement, using jealousy to justify actions, and controlling what they do. So why do people abuse? Something that I've heard often is that hurt people hurt people. So abuse is very cyclic. Oftentimes the abuser will come from families, unstable families, such as witnessing their parents abuse each other or abusing their child as well. And the underlying reason is abusers want to gain and maintain power and control over their partner, whether or not that's under the influence of drugs or alcohol or while sober. So for example, if the abuser is under the influence, they might do things that they wouldn't do when they're sober. However, that's still classified as abuse. And a lot of times they are learned behaviors from other people. Like I mentioned, they might have witnessed their parents abuse each other, or they could learn it from the media as well. However, no matter what the underlying reason is, abuse is never okay, nor is it justifiable. So another common misconception is that victims of abuse can just easily leave when they feel uncomfortable in their situation. However, that's not true. Oftentimes, abuse is a very complicated matter, and it's not as simple as just leaving the household. So victims of abuse may feel fear from their abuser. Their abuser might tell them that if they leave, they're going to kill their family or kill themselves, which makes it a lot more scary to leave. Oftentimes, just like the abuser, victims of abuse can also grow up from unstable conditions when they were younger, such as witnessing their parents abuse each other or abusing them, so they might grow up thinking that this abuse is normal. Another reason is cultural and religious aspects, such as believing that divorce is a sin or feeling fear that they might be outcasted from their family or community if they leave their abuser. And then lack of money. Like I mentioned in the last slide, a lot of abusers tend to control their financial aspects of the relationship. So if the victim is, for example, a stay-at-home mom, they might not have the necessary income that they can leave their situation. And then the last reason is love. Oftentimes, a couple will meet each other and become really attracted to each other, and then later down the road, the abuser will show his true colors and show that they're not all that they were in the beginning. But the victim of abuse may still love their partner because of who they once were. So domestic abuse and COVID-19. With these shelter-in-place orders intact, many victims of abuse are now forced to isolate with their abuser. So they're forced to spend 24 hours with them now. As a result, many women's shelters and hotlines saw a surge in domestic violence calls and cases. For example, the Houston Women's Center saw hotline calls increase by 40%, and in San Antonio, one shelter saw an increase of 18% in family violence calls. However, other domestic violence services noticed a sharp drop in calls, and they believe that this is because the increased time spent with their abuser makes it too dangerous for them to reach out for help. So there are several hardships as a result of COVID-19 due to these quarantine orders, such as courtrooms being closed. While some victims of abuse may have access to a lawyer, most of the times their meetings will be over video chat or through phone calls, which they can't do if they're constantly with their abuser. And also, even if they were to contact a lawyer and get everything figured out, the courtrooms are closed, so they won't be able to get the necessary protective orders or separation orders that they need. Another hardship is women's shelters limiting their acceptance of new victims. As you can see in this picture, the beds are very close together, not 6 feet apart at all, which is what the CDC recommends. And so women's shelters need to take the precautionary measures as well. And even if the survivor does have financial means to escape and leave their situation, a lot of apartments right now are not accepting applications, so they don't have anywhere to go. And as you guys may have noticed, the millions of people are being laid off every single week, and that makes it very hard to find available jobs. So this is the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, and he says that peace is not just the absence of war. Violence is not just confined to the battleground. For many women and girls, the threat looms largest where they should be safest, in their own homes. So previously I mentioned some statistics that occurred in Texas, but this is a worldwide problem because everywhere around the world, countries are enacting their own quarantine orders, which will increase the amount of abuse calls around the world. So here are a few statistics from other countries. In South Africa, authorities said that there are nearly 90,000 reports of violence against women within just the first week of lockdown. In Australia, Google reports a 75% increase in online searches for help with domestic violence. And in Turkey, activists say that the killing of women has risen sharply since the stay-at-home order, which was issued on March 11th. So this is not just a nationwide issue, it's happening in all countries around the world. So what can be done about this issue? We may need to change our tactics because of these isolation orders, but there still is something that we can do to take measures. So if you think you know someone is living with an abuser, watch out for these signs that they may be describing, such as feeling extreme jealousy from their abuser when they hang out with other people, or an explosive temper when they do one little thing wrong, or even forcing unwanted sexual contact. So the first thing that we can do is establish a foundation of trust by listening and acknowledging their feelings. During this pandemic, it's easy for these survivors to feel like their situation is not as bad as what's going on right now, but listening and acknowledging their feelings is really important, and it helps validate them. Reassure them that it's not their fault. Oftentimes the abuser will make it feel like if only the victim had not made one mistake, then they wouldn't have exploded like that. But abusers choose to abuse, and the abused do not choose that. Focus on the survivor, not the abusive partner. It's easy to feel a lot of anger towards the abusive partner and kind of let that out, but that breaks the establishment of trust that you've built. And so it's important to leave the abusive partner out when you're having conversations with a survivor. And something practical that you can do is help them develop a safety plan, whether it's a physical escape plan or helping them manage their finances. This will be really important if things get too severe. And the most important thing is to not contact their abuser. It may be tempting to want to call them out and realize what they're doing, but oftentimes this will just escalate the problem, because if the abuser finds out that their partner told other people, things might get more dangerous and their lives may be on the line. So here are a couple of resources for survivors in Texas. So first, the National Domestic Violence Hotline is something available all around the US, and it's a 24-hour hotline. And right now, during these isolation times, it could be difficult to call the hotline if their abuser is within range of hearing. So they also provide a texting service. And the Texas Advocacy Project is located in Texas, and they offer legal services for survivors. And then the Brazos Valley Sexual Assault Resource Center, or SARC, is a resource here in Bryan College Station, and they offer a 24-hour hotline as well as counseling, and currently they're doing counseling over Zoom, so it is possible for victims right now. And then Twin City Mission, they offer services as well for domestic violence victims. And then the Texas A&M Step In Stand Up is a program on campus that helps promote and educate other students about sexual assault, and they also have a reporting page on their website. And so yeah, that's pretty much all that I have. Like I said, the most important thing we can do right now is to be here for the victims, and to just establish that foundation of trust and have them realize that what they're going through right now is still valid. So yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you, Michelle. That was an excellent presentation, very, very informative. I think that's a topic that a lot of people probably don't necessarily associate with sustainability very often. So I think it was really interesting that you brought that to the forefront today, and especially connected it with what we have going on currently. So the first question that I want to ask you, Michelle, is how does this topic relate to sustainability? How would you kind of explain that to someone who maybe wasn't sure, like why you were talking about this in terms of sustainability?
So sustainability, a lot of times people get it confused with just climate change and the environmental aspect, but there's also social sustainability, which is maintaining the vulnerable groups that we have here on this earth and making sure that their voices are heard and cared for as well. So with domestic violence abuse survivors, they are especially vulnerable because they may not have the necessary community. And so it's important to shed light onto this topic, make sure that they're being cared for.
Okay, excellent, thank you. And then I have a couple questions now in the chat. So this question is, what are the shelters like, and how long do women stay in them? If you have any kind of insight into that.
So shelters, what I've heard, they provide a bed, food, and clothes. And Currently, they're not accepting as many people, as I mentioned before, because of the social distancing guidelines. But basically, I'm pretty sure they have some shelters where women are able to stay as long as they want. And there are other shelters that provide transitional housing, which is basically in between moving out to find their own apartment and moving out of their home with their abuser.
Okay, and then this is an add-on to that last question. So to add on to the shelter question, what might you suggest to shelters in order to provide a safe place for survivors? So,
So currently, I think I would suggest utilizing the space that they have, separating the beds, making them at least 6 feet apart if they have the space, making sure that they're still following CDC guidelines, but maximizing the amount of people that they can accept.
okay, great. So this is a question about women with children. So what happens to women with children if they have to seek a shelter? Can they stay together with their kids?
Yes, they can. A lot of shelters accept the children of abusive households as well. So women and children can stay together.
And then are you aware of any shelters in College Station?
There's the Twin City Missions. They have a shelter called Phoebe's House or Phoebe's Home, I think. I'm not really sure what their capacity is right now, but it is available for people in College Station.
Okay, yeah, and I know that's not like advertised online just because they want to make sure it's a safe place. So I think you have to contact the Twin City Missions to get access to that, or would
Yeah.
you contact, or you can contact SARC, I think.
Yeah, I think both SARC and Twin City Missions, they have resources for Phoebe's Home on their webpage.
Okay, great. All right, so here's another question. Are there many cases of women as abusers, and are the situations different if that's the case?
Um, so women can be abusers, although it's not as common. And because like I said before, no one is exempt from abuse. And for women, it might look like manipulating their victim into giving them money, or they can still have like unwanted sexual contact with their abuser, even though they are women. Um, and a lot of the tactics that they use are the same as males. So the power wheel that I showed on the second slide, they can do things like use their children as messengers or abusing pets, displaying weapons. Women are also capable of doing that.
Okay, thank you for that answer. And then I'm also curious. So you mentioned the Step In, Stand Up on campus, and then have you heard about the Green Dot program before?
I've heard of it, but I don't know too much information on that.
Okay, well, I know a little bit about that, so that's kind of why I wanted to bring it up. Green Dot is a bystander intervention program, and basically what it looks at is on a college campus in particular, sexual assault, dating violence, and stalking are something that we do see on our campus at Texas A&M. And Green Dot is basically a program to give you tools if you happen to see something like that going on, then you could intervene in that situation and try to get someone some help that they may need. So that was just something that I just wanted to bring up that I think connects really well to everything that you talked about here today. All right, so I think that's probably all of the questions that we have today. Give it a second. Looks like nothing else is coming through, but I did see a lot of clapping hands, so I think everyone was congratulating you on a job well done, and I will do the same. Oh, there's some more hands I can see right now. Here's a great job in the chat. So I would concur. That was definitely really illuminating, and I think it's a really, really important topic that we just don't talk about enough. And I think we expect to hear it from certain groups on campus, but I think what's really powerful is talking about this in areas where we maybe wouldn't expect it. So an unexpected messenger like you through the sustainability program. So just thank you, Michelle. And everyone, thanks for tuning in. And we hope to see you back. And I've done it again. I forgot to look up our next talk. So tomorrow is our next talk is going to be at noon. It'll be another sustainability talk. Molly Murphy will be here tomorrow at noon, and she's going to be talking to you about mental health. in relation to coronavirus. So I think that's also another really timely topic, social sustainability. And then at 6 p.m., we'll have an evening event, and Faiza Hassan is going to be talking to you about responses to COVID-19 and how basically what she's looking at is how different countries are responding to COVID-19 and those responses and how they're different, and what the kind of results have been. So please join us tomorrow. And one more time, just a round of applause for Michelle. Thank you, Michelle. Great job on your presentation today. I see some people clapping and showing on their support in the chat. So thanks everyone for stopping by, and we hope to see you all again tomorrow. So everyone take care and stay safe.
Thank you so much.